This time, let's practice by doing the sentence completion. This is a reviewer from the file uploaded by Mico Parulan in scrive.com. If you wish to download it, visit the description box below to download the file. Sentence completion. Each sentence below has blanks, each blank indicating that word has been a mind. Beneath the sentence are 5 numbered sets of words. Choose the set of words that best fits the meaning of the sentence as a whole. Number 1. It is blank to try to destroy pest completely with pesticides. For as each new chemical pesticide is introduced, the pests gradually become blank to it. Useless, drone, pointless, vulnerable, futile, resistant, weak, indifferent, worthwhile, immune. Try, it means to say there are several attempts. Try. It is useless. It can be pointless. It can be futile. Futile means useless also. To destroy pest completely with pesticides. For as its new chemical pesticide is introduced, the pest gradually become resistant, drone, vulnerable. Let's try 3. The answer is 3. Futile and resistant. Let's see if it is correct. Yes, it's correct. 3. It is futile means useless to try to destroy pests completely with pesticides. For as its new chemical pesticide is introduced, the pests gradually become resistant. So they resist even it's already futile because pests are already resisting chemical pesticides introduced to them. Number 2. The usual solution proposed for the chronic blank of affordable housing in the Philippines is to build new houses, often with government subsidies to blank the cost to the buyer. Scarcity, conceal, degeneration, repair, excess, eliminate, undersupply, augment, shortage, and reduce. The usual solution proposed for the chronic blank of affordable housing in the Philippines is to build new houses. So therefore, the solution is to build new houses. Scarcity of affordable, often with government subsidies to conceal the cost to the buyer. Chronic degeneration, the chronic excess of affordable, or proposing usual solution proposed for chronic shortage of affordable, often with the government subsidies to reduce the cost. I think the answer is 5. The answer is 5, correct? Check. 2 corrects. Number 3. The famous Dr. C. Drew's technique. The famous Dr. C. Drew's technique for preserving and storing blood plasma for emergency use proved so blank that it became the blank for the present blood bank system by the Red Cross. Irrelevant, inspiration, effective, urgent pattern. The famous Dr. C. Drew's technique for preserving and storing blood plasma for emergency use proved so relevant, I think, effective, so effective that it became the model for the present. I think it's number 3. 3. Check, the answer is 3. The famous Dr. C. Drew's technique for preserving and storing blood plasma for emergency use proved so effective that it became the model for the present blood bank system by the Red Cross. Next, number 4. Okay. Because they did not accept his basic blank, they were by his argument, assumption, motivation, bias, promise. Because they did not accept his assumption, they were blank by his argument. Because they did not accept his assumption, because assumption, motivation, basic bias, basic promise, they were unconvinced. They were unconvinced. I think because they did not accept his basic means blank, then they were blank by his, they did not accept his basic, so basic promise, they did not accept his basic promise, I think assumption, right? Number 1, assumption, convince, they were convinced. The answer is 4, it's promise. So 1 wrong. Because they did not accept his basic promise, they were unconvinced by his argument. So parallelism. Pain is the body's early warning system. Loss of blank in the extremities leaves a person blank, injuring himself unwittingly. Pain is the body's early warning system. Yes, loss of agony in the extremities, loss of sensation in the extremities, loss of consciousness in the extremities leaves a person desirous of injuring himself unwittingly. Loss of feeling, loss of movement. If there is pain, there is already the loss of not agony, loss of movement. Early pain is the body's early warning system. So loss of blank in the extremity leaves a person a blank. If it is loss of consciousness, I think if there is pain, there will be loss of consciousness in the extremities, loss of consciousness in the extremities. I think it's loss of sensation in the extremities leaves a person vulnerable to injuring himself unwittingly. Feeling habituated, prone, or I think loss of movement in the extremities leaves a person prone injuring himself. Loss of movement. Okay, I think there is the loss of movement. 5. Let's try 5. The answer is 2. Sensation. The loss of sensation in the extremities leaves a person vulnerable to injuring himself. I think. Okay, wrong. It's 2. Next, 6. It is ironic. It is ironic that blank. It is ironic that the blank insights of the great thinkers are voiced so often that they have become more blank. It's it's the link already for more civil service review examination reviewers. It is ironic that the blank insights of the great thinkers are voiced so often that they have become more um, I- philosophical insights. I think the great thinkers are voiced so often as they become more as they have become more questions, um, original, banal, dubious. Dubious insights of the great thinkers are voiced so often that they have become more um, habits. I think it's ironic that the philosophical insights, I think, philosophical for it's one original. It is ironic that the original insights of the great thinkers are voiced so often that they have become more cliche. Okay. Their original insights becomes more cliches. Wrong. It's one. Next. Since many disadvantaged individuals view their situation as blank, as well as intolerable, their attitudes are best described as blank. Since many disadvantaged individuals view their situation as unpleasant, as well as intolerable. So synonymous of intolerable, it's squalid, unpleasant, acute, political. Their attitudes are best described as bellicose, sanguine, resigned, perplexed. I think it's two. Two. The answer is 4. Since many disadvantaged individuals view their situation as immutable, as well as intolerable, their attitudes are best described as resigned. Okay. So 3 corrects, 4 mistakes. 8. Certain animal behaviors, such as mating rituals, seem to be blank, and therefore blank external factors such as climate changes, food supply, or presence of other animals of the same species. Learned, innate. I think certain animal behaviors such as mating seem to be innate, and therefore innate, unaffected by external factors such as climate changes, food supply. I think it's or presence of other animals of the same species, and therefore I think it's learned. Certain animal behaviors such as mating rituals seem to be learned, and therefore immune to external factors such as, okay, the answer is 1 for number 8. 1. Correct answer is 2. Innate. Certain animal behaviors seem to be innate and therefore unaffected by external factors. Number 9. As a person who combines care with blank, Ruth completed her duties with blank as well as zeal. As a person who combines care with levity, with geniality, with vitality, empathy, enthusiasm. I think as a person combines care with empathy, vitality, levity. I think it's enthusiasm because there's the word zeal. Ruth completed their duties with meticulousness as well as zeal. 5. The answer is 5. It's enthusiasm. As a person who combines care with enthusiasm, Ruth completed her duties with meticulousness as well as zeal. Number 10. Although bound to blank the law, a judge is free to use his discretion to blank the anachronistic harshness of some criminal penalties. Discretion as bound to exercise the law, I think. The judge is free to use his discretion to understand the anachronistic. It's bound to enforce. It can be enforced. Bound to enforce. The judge is free to use to lower the anachronistic harshness of some. I think it's 5. Enforce. 1. Although bound to impose the law, a judge is free to use his discretion to blank the anachronistic, to mitigate the anachronistic. I think because mitigate and lower synonymous, it's to impose. Judge should impose the law, not to enforce. Again, judge is to impose the law. So a judge is free to use his discretion to mitigate, to reduce the anachronistic harshness of some criminal penalties. It's 1. Next. 11. The scientific community was blank when a living specimen of a bacteria, long thought to be blank, was discovered by a scientist. The scientist was perplexed, was overjoyed when a living specimen of bacteria, long thought to be dangerous, was discovered. Unconcerned, astounded, long to be extinct. I think it's astounded. They were amazed. 4. Let's try 4. Astounded. The answer is 4. Correct. This the scientific community was astounded, means amazed, when a living specimen of a bacteria, long thought to be extinct, was discovered by scientists. Number 12. Although at times Ruth could be disagreeable and even blank, more often than not, she was the most blank person you could hope to meet. It's number 5. Okay. Although at times Ruth could be disagreeable and even blank, more often than not, she was the most blank person you could hope to meet. Contentious, amiable, you could hope to meet. So most amiable, I think, friendly. Disgruntled, could be disagreeable. A lot of times Ruth could be disagreeable and even contentious. Okay, contentious. Misguided, solicitous, choosy. I think number 1. Even, because disagreeable and contentious, more often than not, she was most amiable, means friendly. 1. Yes, the answer is 1. Contentious and amiable. Ruth could be disagreeable and even contentious. More often than not, she was the most amiable person you could hope to meet. Next, 13. Reuven's interest was focused on blank, the division between theory and empiricism. He was convinced that a blank of philosophy and applied science was possible and necessary. Reuven's interest was focused on eliminating the division between theory and empiricism. He was convinced that a blank of philosophy and applied was possible and necessary. I think eliminating the division, he was convinced that the synthesis, combination of philosophy and applied science was possible and necessary. Restoration, stabilization, duplicity, delineation, I think 1. 1. Yes, correct. Reuven's interest was focused on eliminate the division between theory and empiricism, and he was convinced that a synthesis, a combination of philosophy and applied science was possible and necessary. Okay, just analyze, just look for keywords and analyze the sentence and determine the appropriate word. Need practice. 14. Thanks to his eloquence, so in logic, Reuven spoke blank and made it difficult to his bitterest opponents to blank his opinions. Thanks to his eloquence and logic, Reuven spoke. Eloquence, not it means being expressive, so not monotonously, charmingly, tediously. I think it's spoke abhorrently and made it difficult to his bitterest opponents to disagree. I think persuasively and disagree. Number 5. So the answer is 5, correct. Thanks to his eloquence, so being eloquent, very good speaker, logic, Reuven spoke persuasively, so persuasively and made it difficult to his bitterest opponents to disagree with his opinions. Just analyze now. Just analyze the sentence and look for those synonymous. Number 15, this well-documented part of history of Filipino artistry is of importance because it carefully blank accomplishments of Filipino artists who care all too little known the public at large. Well-documented part of history of Filipino artists is of importance because it carefully recognizes the negligible accomplishments of Filipino who care all too little known the public at large. Carefully overlooks, scrutinizes, and the illusory, distorts, noteworthy, substantiates, and considerable. Carefully substantiates the considerable. I think it's 1. The recognizes carefully because it recognizes the negligible accomplishments. 1. Let's try. 5. Substantiates the well-documented of part of history of Filipino artistry is of importance because it carefully substantiates the considerable accomplishments of Filipino artists who care all too little known the public at large. 16. Mm, surrounded by their enemies and unable to blank their supplies, the defenders of the city feared their food would soon be, I think, um, exhausted. Surrounded by their enemies and unable to, I think, replenish, so exhausted. Yes, unable to replenish, so soon to be exhausted. Correct. I think it's one. Check. Surrounded by their enemies, so therefore they are unable to replenish. Replenish means to add their supplies. Add because the defenders of the city feared the food would soon to be exhausted, so it will be reduced, exhausted, without replenishing, without adding. 617. As environmentalists recently blank in studying the effects of natural caused forest fires, some phenomena that appeared on the surface to be destructive often have a hidden blank effect on the balance of nature. As environmentalists disprove in studying recently determined in studying the effects of I think often have a disastrous effect on the balance. I think it's determined and disastrous fight. The answer is 5. Check. As environmentalists recently determined in studying the effects of natural cause forest fires, some phenomena that appeared on the surface of to be destructive often have a hidden disasters. So correct. Next. 18. The members of the Anti-Graft and Corruption League vowed to blank all traces of blank between private citizens and those in government service. Exterminate, vowed to exterminate all traces of controversy. Uncovered, one, vowed to uncovered. Hypothesize, disclose, I think, vowed to disclose all traces of unenvironmental. Bound to impound. I think it's number 5. Vowed to impound all traces of ties between private and those who think it's 5. 4. Disclose, vowed to disclose all traces of unenvironmental between private citizens and those in government service. 19. 6 to go. 6 attempts. Rosalinda kept her late parents' heirlooms, not for any blank value it had, but for pure blank reasons. Rosalinda kept her late parents' heirlooms not for any personal value it had, but purely for accidental reasons. So, for any, kept her parents' heirlooms not for any financial value, potential, not for any potential value it had, but only for purely monetary reasons. I think not for any intrinsic value, but it had for sentimental reasons. 4. Check. Rosalinda kept her late parents' heirlooms not for any intrinsic value it had, but for purely sentimental reasons. 20. Because our supply of fossil fuel like coal has been sadly blank, we must find blank sources. It's easy. are called sadly exhausted, uh, and we must find efficient. Depleted. Number two, it's depleted. So the answer is 2. Check. Because our supply of fossil fuels like coal has been sadly depleted, we must find blanks, alternate sources of energy. Next, 21. Because Noel was blank in the performance of his duties, his employers could not blank his work. Oh. Derelict. Was derelict in the performance, dilatory, undisciplined in the assiduous in the performance, would not complain. I think assiduous, complain about his work. Nocturnal, dilatory, simplest could not grumble that. Derelict. Was derelict, could not quarrel over his work. I think it's assiduous. 4. Check. Because it's positive. Because Noel was assiduous means hardworking in the performance of his duties, performing well. His employers could not complain about his work. Last 22. 4 items left. The blank pack of wolves blank the herd of cattle in the relentless search a stray calf. The precarious pack of wolves followed the herd of cattle in the relentless search a stray calf. I think it's precarious. Voracious. I think 4. Try. The answer is 1. The voracious pack of wolves stalked the herd of cattle in the relentless search in stray calf. It's 1. Next, 23. It is said that the tradition of shaking hands originated when our ancestors held out their hands, showed that they had no blank weapons and were thus blank disposed. So they had no lethal weapons, concealed weapons, I think no hidden weapons, and were thus harmfully disposed. No secret weapons, finally disposed, hidden weapons, concealed, and were thus amicably disposed. Clearly, law. I think what? No lethal weapon. 2. Concealed and amicably. Said that the traditions of shaking hands originated when our ancestors held out their hands, so that they had no concealed and weapons and were thus. Okay. 2. Next, last 2 items. The number of Philippine eagles. The number of Philippine eagles has blank because the encroachments of humans on their habitat that have caused them to blank their breeding places. So I think it's has number of as increase, the number of diminish because there is encroachment of human on their habitat, have caused them to protect their breeding places, have caused them to protect, to migrate from there. I think the number of Philippines has increased because the encroachment of human have caused them to alter, increase, migrate from. I think it's diminished because the encroachment of encroachments of humans. Encroachments is hunting, so I think it's diminished. Protect the breeding places. Number diminish or increase. Let's try 4. 5 dwindled. Shun has dwindled because the increment to shun there. To shun. Last 25. Despite the archery team members' resentment of the new coach's training regimen, they blanked them as long as he did not blank them too strictly. As long as he did not implement them too strictly. They challenged them as long as he did not they challenge them as long as I think it's 4. 5 tolerated. Number of checks only 13 out of 25. More practice.